Hi, I'm Jaymie.
And I'm Stacey.
And this is the BodySmartPodcast.
And today we are talking belly fat.
Where to start? Where to start?
I mean, it's probably something that every woman has grabbed hold of and looked in the mirror and been like, ugh.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's where I gain fat as well. Like if I ever do gain fat, I get it like mainly on like the love handles and on my stomach. It's like the first area it goes on. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that people say is the last place to come off, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many clients have we spoken to that say, I've lost weight everywhere, but it just won't shift?
Yeah, it does. It's one of those genetic places that a lot of people do store more fat in the stomach area. And then there's also other physiological things that can affect, you storing more belly fat too.
Yeah, which is what we're going to get into today. So we wanted to break down exactly why do you store it on your belly and what you can do about it, because it can feel so frustrating when you feel like you're eating healthy, you're exercising, but yet you've still got this belly fat.
Yeah, definitely. It's stubborn area. I think we all have, the problem is we all hyper focus on areas that we tend to store more fat. We class them as the quote unquote like problem areas. Like if you hold more fat in your arms, people are like, I hate my arms because if you carry more fat there, or your legs or your stomach. But there are steps that you can take to lose fat off those areas.
Yeah, and you're not genetically destined to have a fat belly. You're not hormonally destined to have a fat belly. Like they may be predispositions, but there's so much that you can actually do. And whilst we're on it, the things that you can actually do are not crunches.
They are not crunches, no. I mean, that's like a thing that gets brought up a lot. And you also get marked at that too, is like,
yeah.
I think the worst one we ever done a video to was, there was this stone that people were putting in their belly button. And I done like a reaction video, like taking a mick out of it. You put a stone in your belly button and you put like this plaster over it and it just like melts away the belly fat. And yeah, all the detox drinks and everything else, they all market towards targeting belly fat.
Yeah.
But there are no supplements or set exercises or a set diet that you can do necessarily to target belly fat.
Yeah. So first off, why should we even care apart from the fact we stare at it in the mirror and it makes us sad? Like, why do people care about belly fat on a deeper level?
On a deeper level, I think it's definitely maybe comes down to how you feel about yourself, and that can maybe affect how you talk to yourself, how you talk to yourself in the morning, how you talk to yourself when you get dressed, how certain clothes feel, maybe how attractive you feel in terms of being with your partner. There's lots of maybe other psychological reasons that can affect how you feel about yourself if you may be carrying too much belly fat. And there's lots of different ways you could go with sort of diving into that. And then the other part is it's not healthy as well to have a lot of excess belly fat. So, the spare tyre that it gets called, and I think there's a here we go, I can actually use you for this side. There's the height to weight ratio. So I think your waist needs to be at least half the measurements of your height, which I was like, that sounds like a lot. Like, I'm like, I'm 6'3". What do you mean like half my height as my waist? But I'm pretty sure they're the NHS guidelines of what it should be. Yeah, it should be. So what it said, the general guidance for the waist to height ratio between 0.4 and 0.49 is considered healthy.
Yeah, so about half.
Yeah.
That's crazy, actually.
Yeah, but a lot of people do have that, quote unquote spare tire. And I think it does lead to an increased risk of diabetes, heart disease, and, many other, health issues.
Yeah, so that's one really good quick reference way to check yourself.
Yeah.
Another one is there's a lot of studies that show if you've got a waist measurement as a woman over 35 inches, that's also kind of tipping you into the unhealthy range. So we're not saying any of this to freak you out, but that is something that, there is a valid concern if you feel like that spare tire is just getting bigger and bigger and you want to do something about it. Sometimes understanding that there's more to this than, wanting to look nice in a dress can motivate you to take action.
Definitely. It's we speak to, hundreds of women each month, and I think it's a driver, you know what I mean? I think there's a lot of things that drive people to take action, and they're wise, but a lot of people's wise, that at least with the ladies that we're speaking to lately, has been their health. They want to be healthy and they want to be around for a long time. They want to support the family and the kids, and getting, to be healthy, to feel healthy, to have the data show that you're healthy as well is starting to become like a really important why for people, which is, I think it's a really positive one, because you want to get your health in check for lots of positive reasons.
Yeah. And pretty much everyone, if they said, I want to get healthy, then most people know what the basics are that they should be doing, right? Like less sugar, more exercise, more fiber, more protein, prioritize sleep. But the frustrating thing with belly fat is a lot of the time you could be doing all these things and you don't see any change in your belly.
Yeah. And the tough part is, like, most of the time it can come down to just getting leaner. And what I would push back against is, you know, because you see this with guys as well who, like, want to have a six-pack all the time or want to do this. Like, sometimes you are just genetically going to store a little bit more belly fat there and might not have, like, the flattest stomach or have visible abs or have, you know, a little bit more belly fat. But I'd say, like, even just the reference that we've just gave there for the height to weight ratio, if you have got a healthy waist and a healthy amount of, or a healthy weight, should we say, you know, sometimes, like, almost grueling through that to just try and get a flat stomach or to try and get some sort of visible ab definition, sometimes it isn't worth the cost in terms of the lifestyle change that you have to make. So that's one part of it. If you're in that part where you know you do need to lose belly fat to get to, like, a more healthy range, there are certain things that you can do and certain steps that you can do to make sure that that's more progressive towards getting there.
Yeah, and that's what we're really going to delve into today, because we've got 30-something episodes on what, like, you know, basics are. But if you are feeling really stuck with your belly fat, we're going to dig into 3 of the main hormones that are actually involved in belly fat, because we know that body fat is a storage system for us to store energy, but actually the science now shows that it also acts as an endocrine gland. So it actually has an impact on your body as well. It's not just a receptive part of your body that's passive. It has influences on the rest of your body. And so the more body fat you've got, especially abdominal fat, you start to then, like, put things out of balance a little bit with certain hormones, and things aren't maybe operating the way that they would be if you didn't have that belly fat. So it can become like a bit of a cascade. So the biggie, which people probably seen if they've looked up, like, what's going on with my belly fat, is stress.
Yep.
So this is a vicious cycle, because the more stressed you are, the more you're likely to eat foods that are conducive to putting on weight. The more you put on weight, the more stressed you are, and so on.
It's a vicious cycle. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's stress, learning to manage your stress and being self-aware enough to know how to manage your stress is, you know, your emotional and stress management is probably up there with, like, one of the key things or one of the key traits that you need to have to be a healthy individual. If you don't have a way of blowing off steam in a healthy way, or managing your stress levels and keeping yourself in a quote unquote more stable place, and you're kind of being more emotionally reactive and stressed all the time, and then your lifestyle doesn't support that either, maybe poor sleep, too much coffee, lots of sugar, alcohol, you know, you are just in this vicious cycle that is so hard to break, like so hard to break.
And all of those factors that you just mentioned, like coffee, poor sleep, alcohol, they all contribute to further drive up cortisol, which is one of the stress hormones that is linked with belly fat. And so the more you have high cortisol, the more body fat you store, slower your metabolism is. You actually even start to break down more muscle, which then slows your metabolism even more.
Yeah.
That then affects your thyroid. So there's, like, this cascade, as I said, that it can feel really hard to get out of. And chronic stress makes more fat, and fat in itself makes more cortisol, which is, like, a mind-blowing fact I learned when I was researching this episode. It's not just that you're stressed because you're getting fatter and you don't like it. Like, you genuinely produce more cortisol because you have more fat cells. So it can feel like this stuck situation that you have no power about, but that's not true.
That is not true. There are many steps that you can take, and, you know, this is sometimes where, you know, for at least what I've seen, where people are just, like, morbidly obese or even just obese or overweight. Like, when you just lose, like, 10, 20 pounds, like, all your health markers go up. All your hormones start to regulate more because you're carrying less body fat. And often, not always, because people can lose weight in unhealthy ways, but often people are taking healthier steps to lose weight as well. And that just has a cascade effect in the other direction in terms of overall everything starts to get healthier.
Yeah. And the great thing with stress management techniques, if you can implement them in your life, is they often help support other things to do with fat loss. So if going for a walk helps you just, like, let go of the day's work, that's also going to help your NEAT. If you start to realize
Should I explain what NEAT is?
Oh, go on then.
NEAT is your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. It's a fancy word for just, you know, your non-planned exercise. But yeah, it makes up a big part of your metabolism and how many calories we burn.
Yeah, and I think after COVID, so many people realised they were going out for their one walk because they were allowed to go for one walk.
Yeah, crazy.
And then they were like, oh, it's actually like quite vital to my mental health.
Yeah.
And they would never have maybe chosen to go for a walk for mental health before. And so it starts to highlight like these things you're doing for your stress management actually contribute to your physical health and vice versa.
What do you do for your stress management?
So I do like to go for a walk. I love to get on my yoga mat and have a stretch. It's a little bit challenging to have like a nice full hour session now because I've got a toddler. But even if it's just like often I'll just get on the floor in the kitchen and he's running around and I'll just do a couple of stretches. Most people find they hold stress in like certain parts of their body. So for me, it's like my shoulders and my chest. And so if I can get some like nice chest opening and shoulder mobilization, that really helps me instantly feel better. Some people it might be their hips, some people it's their lower back, and actually like my other half, he as soon as he's getting really stressed at work, his back goes. He says, "My back goes," you know. Nothing goes anywhere.
The quotation marks, yeah. My back
Sorry,
goes.
I am being sympathetic, but nothing goes anywhere. But it's like an embodiment of stress. So being able to be aware of like, this is my physical response to stress is one step, because you can start to notice before you have that cascade of negative impacts. And then knowing, right, okay, it shows up in my back, right? These are the things that help my back release, and implementing those quickly. So wherever you're at with your stress levels, there's probably a little trigger that you could tune into to physically notice, I'm starting to get a bit stressed out right now. Yeah,
definitely. I think it's having that awareness, and even just understanding like what does trigger you. Have you got certain people in your life, certain family members, certain colleagues, you know, certain parts of your home life that do trigger you. And you know, if you want to change that outcome, it's being aware of it is the first step. And then it's just starting to try different things to be like, hey, I don't really like how I feel after that situation. I don't really like how I've reacted to that situation. I'm just looking for a different route or a different way to, you know, feel better after that situation. So your emotional management is just in a overall healthier place.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a good point there, because it's not always about going for a walk or doing yoga or doing a workout, because that isn't always practical
or possible.
No. Yeah. But being able to find maybe less physical ways to manage stress is really helpful. I read a really interesting quote the other day. I don't actually know if this is true.
We got our fact man anyway. So
yeah. So apparently, when your brain is in gratitude or practicing gratitude, it can't also be in anxiety or stress. So I don't know if that's true, but I like the concept.
Sounds nice.
It sounds nice. But it is kind of like, if you are stressed out, it is taking you into a different thought process. If you go, do you know what? I know I'm stressed right now, but I'm just going to sit here and think of 3 things I'm grateful for. On a level, it makes sense that that's going to take you out of this reactive, like stressed, high-powered zone into like a reflective, calmer, happier zone, because you're thinking about things that make you happier.
Yeah.
So even if that's like maybe not scientifically correct,
yeah.
like it's actually still something that you could do in the moment.
Yeah. Oh, what have we got here? So studies have shown that gratitude reduces anxiety, depression too, in part by optimizing the functioning of the, we should definitely get you to read these days.
Okay, shall I?
The autonomic nervous system, and as well as the same neurotransmitters involved in anxiety. The brain can't respond to anxiety and gratitude at the same time, which means it's one or the other.
There you go.
Very nice. Yeah.
Internet says it's true.
The internet says it's true. It must be true. I mean, there's, you know, practicing gratitude is always a great place to be, because you're focusing on what you have and not what you don't have, or being reactive around the situation. So I think that's always, you know, there's just that like fallacy, isn't it? Where people are always like, I'll be happy when, you know, and it's just like, oh, they've got this, so they're better than me. And it's, you know, I think when you're doing that a lot, it definitely puts you in a place of just comparison, and instead of just being like, you know what have I got? What have I got to be grateful for today? And it definitely can, it definitely helps me.
It does. And I think a lot of people might assume that to deal with their stress, they need to take big steps. They need to start meditating, or they need to start going for a run every morning. But the science shows it can be small things that add up. And these can just be subtle shifts of thought processes that don't take a whole bunch of time, don't actually take a whole bunch of effort. It's just a reminder in your phone maybe. And you can start to take control of something that then has those effects on not just your headspace, but your belly fat, right?
Yeah, definitely. I Have you got any other like little quirky things that you do? I've started doing one that I actually got off Andrew Huberman, which is this, and side we have got off Ackman again. So I can back me up on this. It's a double nostril breathe. So you take a big like, and then an exhale, and it's I think a couple of them like literally like lowers your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure. And I've found like if I'm ever in like a stressful situation and I'm about to go into like a new, so say I've been in work and I'm going home, or if I've been in a meeting and I'm going into a different meeting, sometimes I will just do a couple of those breaths, like prime my mind around like just relax. I'll even just keep saying that to myself, so that I don't bring sometimes that same energy that's maybe experiencing something highly stressful into that like next place that I'm going. And I found that's like a very easy, not like I'm not going to go for a workout, I'm not going to go and get like an ice bath, something that I would normally do to like de-stress to an extent. It's like a really easy, quick like state changer.
Yeah, it's like a bite size stress management thing. Yeah, and there's so much behind breath regulation for stress. So obviously my background is in yoga, and pranayama, a lot of it is to do with managing your stress, managing your autonomic nervous system. So by controlling your breath, you have a positive impact on your nervous system. Similarly, when you are stressed, you naturally breathe differently because your body's preparing to go run away or fight. Yeah. So it's doing the physiological things to get you ready for that. And it's a two-way process. So I was actually talking to my brother about this one the other day because he went to a yoga class. They said, now just breathe in through your left nostril and out through your right. And he was like, what kind of ninja level yoga is this? And
I was literally thinking like, I could not do that.
And I was like, no, you have to actually put your finger over.
Right, there you go.
And he was like, yeah, I figured that when I opened my eyes and saw everyone else was doing it.
Yeah, that would be some control.
Yeah. But there's a lot of different pranayama breath techniques, which are designed to sort of calm that nervous system down. And they are backed by science.
What's this say? Go on.
The physiological sigh or cyclic sighing, which is what you were describing, can be done anywhere and costs nothing. If you're feeling rattled, take 2 sharp inhales of breath, typically through the nose, followed by an extended exhale through the mouth. And actually, when it comes to the science of why that works, it's the exhale. Okay. So the exhale signifies to your body like, okay, like we can let go. Yeah. And it's easier to take a big, long, calm exhale when you've changed the state of your inhale.
Right. Okay.
And another cool thing is when you create a big exhale, you create a vacuum in your body. So the more you exhale, the easier it is to take a big inhale. And it just becomes like this nice big cycle of breath. Yeah. So if you find yourself in a short breath situation where you realize I'm actually on a bit on edge and I've become shallow breathing, and that's like one of the stages towards being stressed, break that cycle, whether it's sighing, whether it's like singing is a really good one because you have to take a deep breath in and then belt out a big song.
Just get your favorite tunes on.
Yeah. So anything that's going to make you have a big, powerful exhale. Yeah. And then that's going to reset your cycle of breath.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. So those are things that are little snippets. Obviously, we would also recommend like regular kind of maintenance stress management. So these are things that you could do in the moment.
They're little things that you can do in the moment, which definitely help. They're almost like little hacks, aren't they, to an extent? Yeah, some people don't like that word, but
but the best thing to do is to prevent yourself getting there in the first place.
Of course, and like it's if you can have your environment set up so you avoid. It's impossible to completely get rid of all these sort of situations. It's part of life, isn't it, to an extent? But if your environment's set up where you are in a more healthy workplace where you aren't being triggered all the time by people left, right, and center, which always again isn't the case. And then the other part is that I almost just like see it like it's like filling your cup back up. So, making sure that you're getting great sleep or prioritizing sleep. Great sleep isn't always an option, but prioritizing sleep to get the best that you can in the situation that you're in or the season of life that you're in. Making sure you're regularly exercising. For me, that's a huge way of just like blowing off steam. I can feel like I'm at like 99 out of 100 in terms of stress. I go to bed, I get up in the morning, I do a hard workout, and then I'm like fine again. Like the world is right and sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah. But there is worth mentioning that exercise, if you overtrain, can also be a stressor on your body. And I think it's something that, particularly in the context of managing belly fat, it can be tempting to be like, well, I'm just not working out enough, right? I'm going to do an extra hour of cardio every day because that will make the belly fat go. But actually, if you're also struggling with increase stress in other parts of your life. You add an extra hour of exercise every day. You don't increase your recovery to match that. You're probably contributing to the problem more than helping.
Yeah, it's again about it's understanding that tipping scale and knowing where you need to maybe pour, how you need to pour but more back into you. So if you're sleeping 5 hours a night and, you know, you are looking to get up an hour earlier to get an exercise session in and then do a HIIT workout, you know, you probably would have been better getting that extra hour in bed and maybe just trying to go for a long walk at lunch or something instead. Like that's going to serve you a lot more instead of always putting that consistent pressure on you to exercise. So yeah, it is having that awareness of like what is putting like that physical pressure and stress on your body, mental and physical, and also like how you personally react to relieving that.
Yeah, and that's what it all comes down to, right? What's your body react like? Mm-hmm. What's a balanced workout routine for you?
Yeah.
And what actually makes you feel better, not you're doing it because you think it's going to fix this problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, cortisol is a biggie. And I think it's something that people often, they think it's BS and they think, oh yeah, that's just an excuse that people come up with. But it underlies so many of our choices as well. Even if we discount the physiological impacts that cortisol has on our body fat distribution, the impacts on our choices and our habits when we're stressed are huge.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are emotional eaters, you know, anyway. So if you feel highly stressed, and one of the ways that you normally deal with stress is that you turn to food, and then you're feeling more stressed, that can always be like a knee-jerk reaction. That's what we just said. It's like it can be this vicious cycle that just keeps you stuck to an extent. So yeah, it's a big part of this, and we bring it up on so many podcasts, is that awareness. You know, and it's like understanding your triggers, understanding how do you deal with being stressed. Are you turning to food? Why are you turning to food? Is there another way you can, you know, blow off steam to relieve that stress that doesn't involve, you know, turning to a full bar of Galaxy or dairy milk or whatever it might be for you?
Yeah. And well, that kind of leads into the next hormone that I wanted to talk about today, which is insulin. And it's another kind of buzzword that people will throw around and they're like, oh, I'm insulin resistant. I've got to cut all the carbs. And if you're in that stress cycle of overeating sugary foods and carb foods, you know what? There might be an element of that at play. I'm not saying I'm diagnosing you with insulin resistance. And I'm not saying that that is the reason why you've got belly fat, but it's something to be aware of if you're starting to go into that cycle of feeling stressed, eating more, craving more sugary foods, then eating more sugary foods, and craving more sugary foods. That can be a sign of insulin resistance. So it's, like I said, a buzzword that's banded around all over the place. I think it's worthwhile. Let's just kind of breaking down what it even means. So insulin itself is a storage hormone, right? And insulin is basically the filing PA that like goes and stores all the energy that you eat, takes it out of your bloodstream and says, right, you go to that cell, you go to that cell needs some energy, you go to that cell. If you're eating too much sugary stuff and your bloodstream is flooded, it can't cope. And so it does its best, but your bloodstream just becomes so full of sugar, that it then just goes, right, we can't deal with this properly. Let's just store it as fat. And more...
This can only happen in the presence of excess calorie consumption?
Not necessarily, because if you just eat a whole bunch of sugar at once and it causes a blood sugar spike, that's when your insulin can't cope.
Right.
So you could have ate nothing all day and then you go and have just like a sugary drink, a donut, a chocolate bar, all in one, with no fiber, no protein to like slow that down. If you do that on a consistent basis. Yeah. So you could be in a calorie deficit, but you could still be harming your insulin efficiency.
Yeah. What is the, like, how many people, like, what's the average amount of sugar that people are having on a day-to-day basis? Do you have any idea? No? Because it's got to be so much now with, like, the way the Western world is set up and our diets. Yeah. There's highly palatable foods. It's those highly processed foods. Like, there's sugar in, like, the crazy, not last time I was in America, the time before, I was eating the bread at breakfast with, like, I don't get my typical 6 eggs. And I'm like, this is sweet. I'm like, why is my bread sweet? And then I asked, like, I put it on like Instagram stories and they were like, yeah, there's probably loads of sugar in the bread. I was like, here we go. So what? The average American adult teenager and child consumes about 17 teaspoons of added sugar a day, or about 270 calories. I actually think it's more than that.
That's like just added sugar though. So that's like not including if you ate an apple. That's literally just Imagine if you scooped out 17 teaspoons of sugar into a pile. That's a lot.
But that used to, like a Lucozade, remember the 330 ml before the sugar ban in the UK? That they had 11 teaspoons of sugar in just that one bottle. And I was like, well, I used to drink like 2 of them as a kid. You know what I mean? Yeah, my mum used to say, like, we only used to give them to sick people in the hospital. You know what I mean? Like, quite literally, we'd give someone a bottle of Lucozade just because it had so much sugar in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's go on. So what? I'll let you read this one, Stacey.
So in the US, apparently 96 million US adults have prediabetes, and 80% of them are unaware they've got it. So that's where that prolonged exposure to blood sugar elevation has been going on and on and on. And eventually that means your insulin, it's just, you're not responding to the insulin. It doesn't matter how much your body puts out, it can't do its job properly. And so everything goes out of whack. And it's another vicious cycle, because the more you do that, your body goes, well, my cells aren't getting enough sugar or enough fuel, so we must eat some more food because something's not right here. And so you have more cravings, and so you eat more sugar, and then you have a spike, and then it can't deal with it, and then you have, and it just goes round and round.
You're just fighting against your physiology, which makes it's so difficult. But
if
you probably think of, like, especially when you go to America, you know, people have like a breakfast, but then there's like pancakes and syrup and, you know, the full big cup of Coke, and it's like there's probably like 20 teaspoons of sugar in that. And then even like a standard breakfast that gets marketed as healthy, you know, milk and cereal, you know, the amount of sugar that's even in milk, never mind the cereal as well. And it's not to demonize any foods, but it's just the portions that a lot of people are having. You know, you probably are having like 30, 40 grams, 50 grams of sugar for breakfast. And it's like, if I had 50 grams of sugar for breakfast, I know like an hour and a half, 2 hours later, I'd be hungry. I would crash. I'd have like a little bit of a carb crash off the back of it. I mean, I'd have like an energy crash. I mean, I'd like want more. Like, I'd feel hungry. And that's like, and I've actually got my blood work done, and I don't even actually sigh. Come on, you know the hormone, what's it called? The diabetes hormone. You have it tested. H1HC. That's how they measure your blood sugar to make sure if you're on like the cusp of becoming diabetic. And I've had mine done and I'm fine, but I have that reaction to sugar. So that's somebody who's like works out all the time, is healthy, sleeps well, and like that's my reaction to like a huge dump of sugar maybe in the morning. Yeah. It's like, so if that's mine, like what's somebody else's? And then it's like, how much of an even bigger negative effect is that having on your energy levels, your cognitive function, your desire to eat more food?
Yeah, and it is that vicious cycle. And it is why we get clients that come to us and say, I'm addicted to sugar. Like, I physically have no control. I'm addicted. And it's easy to say, no, you're not. You're not addicted. But there is a very strong physiological process going on behind those cravings, which is undeniable. And so being able to understand that as the person experiencing this feeling of addiction, being able to understand, right, okay, that's what's happening. So I just have to break this cycle. Yeah. Like, I have to not just flood my blood with sugar. I have to insert some fiber, some protein, have some vegetables with it, spread it out a little bit. Yep. And you touched on something super important, and that is exercise. Yeah.
I mean, exercise is something that I do a lot and is a huge way of me just blowing off steam in general. But it's something that, you know, I regularly do for probably more for my mental health, and the physical health benefits are a nice benefit off the back of it. But yeah, exercise is huge for probably regulating every hormone in your body.
It is, and lean muscle mass in particular. So we're talking about resistance training here, not just general exercise like going to a dance class, but lean muscle mass is directly related to improving insulin resistance in like gajillions of studies, right? Yeah. So if you are in that cycle, by the way. Gajillions. Yeah. If you are in that cycle where you are feeling addicted to sugar and you just don't know how to break this cycle, changing your diet can feel really hard, particularly when you just feel dependent on that crash, eat some more sugar to get through it, crash. Like, how do you stop that? This can be one addition to your life that you can take control of, even if you feel like a bit helpless around your food. Adding in some resistance training can start to shift your physiology and start to put you back in control.
Yeah. Definitely. And it doesn't even need to be much. I think I talk about this all the time about like minimum of like 2 full body resistance sessions a week. And that's where you want to train like your whole body, but you can do that in like half an hour. Now it might take a couple of sessions where you're spending 60 minutes, 90 minutes to just get familiar with the exercises of what a full body workout session or resistance session would look like. But once you kind of, you know, develop some of those skills and that knowledge around how to effectively move your body and do full body resistance training, 2 30-minute sessions is where you could start each week and progress on that. And that can have a significant difference of building muscle, maintaining muscle, and have an overall really positive effect on your physiology.
Yeah. And actually, when you're starting out, 30 minutes, because you're a beginner and building muscle, 30 minutes twice a week, you're going to see actually quite significant progress if you are consistent at that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's like the jealous part that I have about anyone who's a newbie. You literally do get newbie gains. And a lot of people, like, there is that resistance to push through, and people don't like being a beginner. And it's, fall down 100 times, get up 101. And, the whole analogy of, like, when a baby is trying to walk, they don't give up walking. They just keep trying and trying and trying. And it is only as we become adults, we accept failure and do give up on things. But, like, full body resistance training, not just for your hormones, not just for losing belly fat, has just a wealth of physical and mental health benefits that you honestly want to be doing for like the rest of your life.
But to bring it back to probably the reason that you're listening today, if you're listening because you found this and you searched belly fat, it is something you should do. Because there's, again, a load of studies, and I just found 2 today that really underline how important exercise is in dealing with this issue. You can lose belly fat from just addressing your diet. But as I said, if you're in that cycle of carb crash, carb craving, that can feel super hard. And it also doesn't work as well, and it also doesn't last as long.
Yep.
So one study showed that in the example where participants just were on a diet, they lost 12.5% of their body weight. When they had the exact same diet, the exact same calorie deficit, but they also exercised for 3 hours a week, they lost 16% of their body weight.
Yeah.
So even though the exercise wasn't adding extra calorie deficit, they looked better, they felt better, Definitely. They lost more body fat. And then after a year, this is a different study, after a year, people who have lost a significant amount of weight, those who did not exercise had a 25 to 38% increase in that belly fat coming back on.
Wow.
That's huge.
Yeah. And you do see it, like, one of the common traits of people who lose weight and keep it off is that they continue to exercise. So, making exercise something that is a part of your life. And even if you have a negative relationship with exercise and or lifting weights or don't know where to start, learning to develop those skills and to make it a part of your life where it's actually easy to go and do that for, twice a week for 30 minutes is not only going to make a significant difference in you losing belly fat or losing weight, but it's also going to help you keep that off as well as all the other benefits that we always talk about.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, because when you're on a mission, like, oh, my clothes suddenly don't fit, I can't wear my favorite jeans, I need to get rid of this spare tire. People often go on like an extreme diet and then decide to work out 5 times a week.
Got the carbs.
Yeah, get it done. Right, weight's gone. Cool, back to normal life. And then that 25 to 38% body fat comes back.
If not more, you know what I mean? Like we see all the time, don't we? Like people just rebound because you go back to quote unquote normal life. But normal life was the reason you got in that mess in the first place. And that's obviously, you don't want to just go from like one extreme to another and have that all or nothing mentality, because it will just keep you in that perpetual cycle of just, on a diet, off a diet, with belly fat, not belly fat. And it's every time you go through that cycle as well, it gets physiologically and psychologically harder to start again.
Yeah. And so our takeaway from that point is you need to go to the gym.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have to go to the gym.
You can work out from home. Yeah, get yourself some dumbbells and a TRX, and you can do a hell of a lot.
Yeah, but definitely, even if you can't even face tackling your diet, start with your exercise and do it for as long as you ever possibly can.
Yeah.
And so then that moves on to one more hormone that has a significant impact on this area of the body. And it's something that we have a lot of clients struggle with. And that's the change in estrogen, particularly when women get to perimenopause and estrogen levels become a little bit erratic and eventually just drop off after menopause. So officially 1 year after a woman has their last menstrual period, that's when you officially become menopause.
Yep.
And that means your estrogen is like through the floor. I mean, Sai, can you just check the actual ratios? But it is literally through the floor compared to what it would have been during a normal period of menstruation. Yeah. And estrogen is designed to prep your body for pregnancy. So it makes sense. In menopause, you're not going to get pregnant, don't need any estrogen, right?
Yeah.
But estrogen was one of the things that told your body to store fat around your hips and your thighs, because that's somewhere that is easy to access when it wants to feed a growing baby.
Makes sense.
Don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So that's when we find this middle-age spread or whatever you want to call it becomes really common, and people say, like, I haven't changed anything. I'm doing the same exercise routine, I'm eating the same, but all of a sudden I've got like this fat tummy that I've never had.
We hear this so much, like so many people like DM the page, and it's just like a common problem, and it gets labeled as a meno belly to an extent, like it's menopausal belly that you've got, and it's the same thing is happening in the sense of, how am I just all of a sudden getting this like fat stomach? I've not changed anything really, and it can feel like such a shock, and then you're trying so many different things and it's not working, or the things you used to try are not working, and it's a real shock to the system for so many women.
Yeah. And Si's just got up the figures there. So for a premenopausal woman who's having regular periods, it could be up to 400. I don't know what the P stands for. Do you know what the P stands for?
Yeah, it's picograms per milliliter.
There we go. So it could be up to 400 picograms per milliliter for premenopausal. After, could be 0 up to 30 picograms, which is actually like in the ballpark of what a man has. So it is a huge change that's going on in your body, and you might not be changing anything in your lifestyle, but actually this is a real factor when it comes to your body weight distribution. And we're not saying you can't lose weight, but where you store the weight that's left might look different to when you were 30.
Yeah, which is tough, you know what I mean? Like, again, there's risks as well to gaining belly fat, which we've covered it a little bit earlier. But also, you know, if you've not really been someone that's carried belly fat or has had a little bit of belly fat, but then it's changed and got worse, you know, that can feel like a real shock to the system. And especially when you're maybe not even that aware, like maybe just going through perimenopause, maybe not even aware you're going through perimenopause, and you're seeing these changes, and it's like, what's going on? It can be a real shock to the system.
It can. And this is something that, you know, it isn't impossible to affect. You can look into HRT, but there are also all those other factors to belly fat that if you don't want to go down that route, you still have the choice to take control of your sleep, your stress, your activity levels, your muscle mass, your diet composition, how much sugar are you eating, how much fiber, how much protein. So again, it's not to say, well, if your estrogen levels have dropped off, well, that's it now. You're destined to have a spare tire, but it's something to be aware of.
It is, yeah. Menopause, and there's a menopause and there's a male menopause as well, but both of them are just hormone deficiencies. And how you have to just look at that is sometimes people will just take that knee-jerk approach to going to take HRT or TRT for guys. And even though that can have an impact, if you've not got your sleep, your regular training, your stress management, an overall healthier diet in place, like, it can make a difference taking something like HRT or TRT, but it's still not going to be as effective as it could be if you're not taking those steps. So it is something to be aware of, because there is always that knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, just take a pill and fix the problem. And like, I completely understand. That feels like a much easier route to go down, but sometimes you might then just take that pill and it's like, then what? You know what I mean? You might be taking HRT and it's like, I still don't feel as good. And it's like, yeah, you now at this time or the season in your life, it does become more important than ever to, make sure that you are, managing certain parts of your health in a really good way. And then if you are doing that and you go down the HRT route, you'll feel even better. Like, you'll feel fantastic. So, it's those healthy habits and healthy lifestyle choices that we always talk about are just so important at every stage of your life to have a better quality of life. But yeah, even more so as you start to go through perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah, and I think actually for some people it can be a bit of a kick in the ass to make these changes, because it does become two very diverging paths. If you don't start to take control of your habits and your lifestyle and your diet at this point in your life, you may have got away with it for decades.
Yeah.
And like, I hate this phrase, but you might have been skinny fat, like you fit in nice clothes, you look lovely, but you're not actually healthy. And so this makes you take stock and say, do you know what? I'm going to choose things that not only make me feel and look better, but I am actually going to be healthier as well. So I think it does come to a point, and this is where a lot of our clients join us, that they've decided enough's enough. I'm actually going to put me first, because maybe for decades, actually, they were always putting someone else first as well.
Definitely, and especially if you're at that age of going through perimenopause and menopause, you've probably put your career first in the past, and then your family and your kids, and everyone else has kind of come before you. And you get it, but you do need to pour back into you if you want to be around for a long haul and stay healthy and have that energy and quality of life as you age, because you know, you definitely see this, that and the gap is gonna get wider, especially the way society is set up now, is that as people age, you know, when you're 20, if you're fit and healthy and someone's not fit and healthy, the gap in quality of life isn't that drastic. When you get to 30, the gap widens. When you get to 40, it really widens. Like it's a very different people and different lives. 50, huge. 60, like some people could be
dead.
Yeah, quite frankly.
I know,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, even before that. But then also like the amount of 60-year-olds that I know now who are like fit, healthy, run around they run around like they're in their 20s and they're 60. Like when I was a kid, like it didn't feel like I knew any 60-year-olds like that, but that is the case now. But if you are someone that hasn't, you know, those bad habits do compound over time. And it's never to dissuade anyone, like if you haven't started in your 20s, like you can start at any age. And the difference in the quality of life that you can have. And, you know, some people are like, oh, well, I'm not going to be here for another, 10 or 15, like you could probably be here for double or triple the length of time that you maybe believe. And like, why wouldn't you want to have the highest quality of life that you could?
Yeah, it's a bit like paying into a pension, isn't it? It sounds like something that's going to be painful at the time. You've got to give up the money now. You could be enjoying that now. But every wise person on the planet is going to say, you should really be paying into a pension because you're going to regret it later and it will compound. And what you start with now is worth more now because you started.
Well, we have a good pension system in the UK, not so much in the US. So there's something to state there, but yes, definitely.
So that's the three kind of hormones that I wanted to talk about. But something that I also wanted to cover off because it does tie into a lot of what we talked about, and it's alcohol. When you're stressed, when you feel like you just can't be in control of the situation, a lot of the time we turn to drink. Not in like an awful depressing way, but you just want a nice glass of wine to just unwind at the end of the day. And I just wanted to point out that actually if you are struggling with these things, it can just compound all of those effects.
I mean, so I've got a Whoop, and no advertise here, by the way. I've just literally bought one because I thought it was good and listened to the owner on a podcast and got his kind of pitch. And since I've had this, I used to, like, sometimes when I go out for dinner, I would just have a couple of drinks, and then I would literally see my data on my Whoop the next day, and it'd be like my resting heart rate's normally like 48 to 50, and it'd be like up 10, 15 beats. So my heart would beat 10 to 15 beats more, per minute for 8 hours. And I was like, my heart's beating extra like 3,000-4,000 beats while I've been asleep. Like, no wonder I feel a bit more tired the next day. And then my heart rate variability would be down. So like, I'm not dealing with like stress as well. And it's like, wow, like that was 2 drinks or 3 drinks. And it's just come to the point now where seeing that data off just my sleep alone, I'm just like, I'll just have a soda water with blackcurrant. Because it just doesn't feel worth it. I would prefer the better night's sleep instead of having the drink, even though I do enjoy to have a drink. But just in that situation, I mean, it's like, so there's alcohol that affects me having bad sleep, and then bad sleep can affect my motivation the next day to maybe want to work out, or my energy levels or cognitive function with work. So just like all of that just come from a couple of drinks. And then anytime I've actually drank a lot of alcohol and then eaten a lot of food as well. Well, one, you don't exactly make the best food choices, do you, when you've had a drink? I mean, there's that to be said, eating a McDonald's at 2:00 in the morning. And then, I always just find like, and I think there are some research, a lot of research about how your body processes food when you're drinking alcohol. The alcohol is like the fire, and then your body's trying to put the fire out. But I literally feel like I feel my love handles the next day. I'm like, ugh, like what's happened? Probably because I've just drank like 2,500 calories in alcohol, and I'm probably eating a
very salty meal
and that type of stuff. But yeah, it's I go back and forth with my relationship with alcohol, but I just know like if I'm ever wanting to see a client to see the fastest results possible, or they've been struggling with a little bit of an up and down, minimizing or cutting back on alcohol can be like literally it doesn't have to be forever, but just it can be one of the best things you can do for a season to just get things in check.
Yeah, and particularly if you are struggling with belly fat, because it has those impacts on your intake of sugary foods. I mean, it's sugary in itself. It has an increase in cortisol when you drink alcohol. It stops you sleeping properly, which increases your cortisol. All of these factors, which you're fighting against as it is, you don't need to add to. If you can just take alcohol out of the mix for like a couple of weeks and see if you feel any better, what have you got to lose?
I mean, you will feel better. And It is difficult. You know, it's in so many social settings. I walked down the shops the other day, and at the end of every single aisle, alcohol, you know, wine, whiskey, there's like every single one. You turn around, like you go in the opposite way. You can't see it. It's not at the end of that shelf, but like literally every single aisle in the whole shop. So, you know, you are constantly being pressured and marketed, and it's very social, but, you know, I do enjoy a drink. Like, I'm not going to lie. I do enjoy having like a couple of drinks or even having a night out, but you know, I know anytime I'm in that phase of like get shit done, or if I want a client to go through a phase of feeling a hell of a lot better and healthier, you know, cutting back on alcohol or eliminating it for at least a season is just a good thing to do. And everyone knows that. Like everyone does know that.
Everyone knows that, but it's easier said than done.
Exactly. It is. It's always those ones things that's easier said than done. But, you know, coming back to priorities, and if you're going through a season where you want to lose weight or you want to lose belly fat, you know, give it a go. Set yourself a time frame to not drink and to minimize the amount that you drink, and just see how much better you feel. See if the belly fat starts to come off.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons that it is so hard to cut back or to stop is because it is used as a de-stressor for a lot of people. And so if you say, well, I'm just going to stop drinking, and you don't have an action plan of what you're going to do instead, that's when it can be super hard. You get home from a really stressful day and you would normally go and get a glass of wine. Yeah. And then you're like, well, now what?
Yeah.
So making sure you've got other plans for that, and making sure in your head, you know, if you're going to a social event, just plan to be the driver. So you're not just falling into old habits. As long as you plan for success, it doesn't have to feel as hard as you might think it would.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I used to get clients to just like be smarter about those approaches. So they'd go to a social event. Yeah, they may have drove, but I'm like, always have a drink in your hand. So everyone thinks that you're having a drink. Now, it doesn't need to be a alcoholic drink. You just have a drink. So people don't, you know, you stood there with no drink in your hand, and people are like, oh, why aren't you drinking? You know, and it's that peer pressure starts. And then if anyone does ever ask, I've just always found, instead of saying, oh, I'm not drinking, I just go, oh, just say you're doing a challenge, like you're doing a fitness challenge. And then people are like, oh, they like support you instead of being like trying to peer pressure you around while you're drinking. So just those two little things can, you know, one, less people ask you because you've got a drink in your hand. Two, you say you're doing a challenge, people support you instead of trying to peer pressure you. So that can just make a significant difference where you don't feel like you're fighting battles on a night out.
Yeah, I love that. It's a really good little hack, that.
Yeah.
Tell people you're doing a challenge. It's not even a lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. So if you are struggling with belly fat right now, obviously there's been a lot of science and facts today. But the big takeaways really are you can be in control. Even if these hormonal things are going on, even if you're going through menopause, even if you're super duper stressed, you can make small changes that can make a difference.
100%. And you have to, even if you've been struggling up to this point, you have to have that mindset that like you can change, and if what you've been doing hasn't been working, that's always a clear indication of like, right, the actions that you're taking aren't delivering the results that you want. And that just means you just need to look elsewhere. It's not getting caught in that negative cycle of like, I'm always going to have belly fat, I'm genetically destined for this stuff. And it's like, no, I need to just look a little bit deeper into what I'm doing and change some of the actions. And you definitely can get to a place where you're feeling fit, you're feeling healthy, and you're proud of your appearance and accepting of it.
Yeah.
Accepting of it. There we go.
So top 4 things for somebody to do if this is how they're feeling about their tummy right now.
I think great sleep will change your life and really help your hormones. Like that's just always. So if you're not prioritizing good sleep, and it's not just the quantity of sleep, it's the quality of sleep. So, you know, how stimulated you are before you go to bed, whether you're having caffeine in the afternoon, you know, making sure that you actually wind down. And I know these can all sound like ideals, but there will be little steps that people can often take to improve the quality of the sleep. That's huge. Minimizing or cutting out alcohol, at least for a period of time, is going to be huge. Eating nutrient-dense whole foods, you know, for the majority of your diet is you know, minimally processed foods is going to make a massive difference, because you will just naturally find that you're eating less just sugar in general, which will play a huge role. And lift weights, like resistance training, like that is just a huge part. Like full body resistance training at least twice a week. If you don't know where to start, there's a million videos on YouTube, or reach out and get some help. Go with a friend, get a trainer, but learn the foundational stuff of how to train, do full body resistance training. And that's a skill that will benefit you for the rest of your life. And most importantly, if they want to lose belly fat.
And so if that's something that you feel like, do you know what, I do need some help with this, then make sure you click the link in bio to find out more.